Hello, my name's Alun Parry. I'm the author of this book, How to Remove Trauma Response, a Memory Reconsolidation Guidebook for Therapists and Coaches. And what I want to look at today is one aspect of the trauma removal formula. So let me just go to this and I'll show you exactly what I mean. So this is the formula for memory reconsolidation. Memory reconsolidation is the brain mechanism which triggers not just trauma response removal, but any emotional learning. And the formula, as you've probably seen from other videos, is activate plus mismatch plus repeat, this kind of juxtaposition. And when that happens, bingo, it triggers memory reconsolidation, and the old brain pathway is then rewritten. So the trauma response stuff isn't on there anymore. And so it means that any change is permanent and is effortless to maintain. So in this short video, I want to look at the activate part and basically answer three questions very quickly. The first is, when we talk about activation, what do we activate? Why do we activate? And how do we activate? So let's start with the first one in terms of what. When it comes to what we activate, one of the key parts in our work as therapists is to assume that the client's problem makes sense. It's a very different stance to those who think it's disordered or irrational or maladaptive or any of those things. It makes sense and it happens for a good reason. And so a big part of our job is to do the discovery work to find out how it makes sense. Because the brain is a prediction machine. And so what we're trying to find here is the underlying prediction, the underlying emotional learning, if you want to put it that way, that basically activates the nervous system to give us all these uncomfortable feelings in the body that either gives us a panic attack or will either kind of just make things too uncomfortable to go ahead with. So give us an aversive feeling that drags us back. And so what we're looking to activate in many ways is this underlying prediction. You might think of it as the old distress, but I would be more kind of, I'd get more nuanced on that and think of it, what is the prediction that keeps this problem alive? And so it's this prediction that we're activating when we think of this activate plus mismatch plus repeat. So in order to find that, we need to do a whole load of discovery work. I've got some other videos in there. I go into that in the book as well. And also I go into that inside of my coaching academy, which you can find out more about at freshtherapists.com. And we go into that in a lot of detail. So that's the what. We're essentially trying to activate the old prediction. And the reason why we need to do that, if we come to the second part, which is why, we need to do that because if we don't, the brain is, if you think about this as our brain pathway and it's got the trauma response on it, if you don't activate this first, the brain doesn't actually know which of the many other, because there's lots of brain pathways here and there's brain pathways that can be created as well. So the brain doesn't know which it's dealing with. And so if there's any new information, it'll put it somewhere else. And that's no good, because what you're doing there is leaving the trauma intact. The trauma response is intact. And we don't want the trauma response to be intact, because what can happen then is that this can trigger and you kind of get relapse or the problem remains. So what we want to do instead is to let the brain know which brain pathway we're dealing with, so that this stuff here is overwritten onto the relevant one. It's very much like a spreadsheet. So I'm going to very badly draw a spreadsheet, but as you know, a spreadsheet has got rows and columns. So let's do some columns first. And let's do some rows. So if you've got the number 12 written in this particular cell. If you wanted to replace it and say, write the number 16 instead, you would need to click in that cell, because otherwise the information is just going to go somewhere else. And you don't want it somewhere else. You want it in the cell that has the 12 in. So what you need to do instead is actually click in the cell on the spreadsheet, which has got the correct, which is the cell that you want to edit, basically. So you would click in there first, and once you've clicked in there, then you could overwrite it, no problem. And it's pretty much the same with the brain. The activation that we talk about here, the reason why we need to do it is because, like clicking in a cell on a spreadsheet, it tells the brain, this is the one we're working on. Don't be putting the information in one of the other spreadsheet cells. This is the one we're working on. And so this is the one that we're going to be overwriting. So if you don't do that, it's very similar to just having the number 16 down here instead and keeping the number 12. And that's not what we want to do with removal of emotional learnings or trauma response. And the final thing is, let's come over here. The final thing is, how do we do it? Well, that's a massive topic in itself. But typically what we will do is connect to some kind of scene, and it could be an old scene, or it could be something relatively recent, which is representative of the problem that is going to trigger that prediction. There's lots of other ways of doing it as well. I'm just trying to keep it short so I don't give you a massive video, but something that's easy to just bite-size consume. So we're connecting to the old prediction. But the key thing that I wanted to get across here in terms of the how is that it doesn't have to be a heavy connection. Just as with this spreadsheet here, if you want to click in here, you don't have to hit your mouse with a hammer. Just a gentle click will activate it. And it's the same here. The purpose, as I say, is just to tell the brain what we're working on, which brain pathway we're working on here. And so a gentle connection is okay. And that's really important if we're working with a client, for instance, whose window of tolerance is quite low. And so to go heavy would actually really be quite triggering. We can actually go in with a gentle connection. So let's just run through that again. The formula for memory reconsolidation, which is the brain mechanism that removes trauma response, is this here: activate plus mismatch plus repeat. In terms of activation, we wanted to cover what exactly do we activate, why do we activate at all, and how do we activate. And we saw that we're activating the prediction, the thing basically which keeps the problem alive, why it makes sense. That the reason why we do is very much like a spreadsheet. We want to make sure that the brain knows, it's like clicking on a cell, the brain knows which brain pathway we're working on. And then finally, to note that it doesn't need to be a heavy connection, that a gentle connection is enough. And like I say, if you want to find out more, get more blogs, more videos, or even join my coaching academy, then you can simply go to freshtherapists.com in order to get more information. So thanks very much, and I'll see you soon.